the impact of Christianity was so manifest that to speak English was, in a sense, to Christianize yourself. I wanted, so the article, what had I got wrong, was basically I hadn't realized how Christian I was.
Okay.
I had not realized how Christian I was in my assumptions, in my attitudes, in my morals, in the most basic way that I understood and saw the world.
Where in 2016 you wrote an article called "Why I Was Wrong About Christianity" for the New Statesman, which is a very interesting discussion, talking about the influence that Christianity had in the development of many societies, but also among them the one we talked about in the Western society. Previously, you thought that Western values were derived from Greece and Rome, and you kind of didn't really own anything to Christianity. The context within the values that Greece and Rome perpetuated were Christianized, and therefore that's where the values came from. But you've since had a change of heart. Could you explain why you think it became core from Christianity rather than principles that already existed in Greece and Rome before Christianity?
Well, so I was writing books about Greece and particularly Rome. And actually, it was on the most basic level that because I was writing in English, a European language, I found so many of the words that I wanted to use inadequate to sum up the world that I was describing. So words like religion, secular, homosexuality, science, all kinds of words carried a kind of a freight that risked becoming anachronistic. And I kept thinking, well, why? What has changed? And the more I thought about it, the more I came to realize that essentially the impact of Christianity was so manifest that to speak English was, in a sense, to Christianize yourself.
Okay.
That the weight of signification that English words have are so shaped by Christianity that it can be almost impossible to apply them to pre-Christian civilizations. And the more I thought about that, the more I came to see that when I look back at Greece or Rome, it was like trying to peer through a kind of dust haze. And that dust haze was made up of kind of tiny little Christian particles. I could kind of dimly make out the lineaments, but it was a real effort to try and to get rid of them. And I wanted, so the article, what had I got wrong, was basically I hadn't realized how Christian I was.
Okay.
I had not realized how Christian I was in my assumptions, in my attitudes, in my morals, in the most basic way that I understood and saw the world. So I'll give you an example, which is a word that might seem impeccably Greek and have nothing to do with Christianity, which is democracy. So people say, it's people power. That's how it's translated. And so people
History
look
in
back.
Athens. It's very Greek.
So it comes, associated with Athens in the late 6th, 5th, 4th centuries BC in Greece. And we assume that there's a continuity between the democracy practiced by the Athenians and the democracy that we have in the modern world. And so we look back at ancient Greece and we say, but what about the slaves? What about the foreigners? What about the women? They didn't have a vote, so therefore it couldn't really be a democracy. And in doing that, we are assuming that the Athenian democracy was founded on certain principles, namely that everyone has a kind of right to, they have rights, that's what underpins democracy, your democratic right to a vote. And that's the logic that in 20th century meant that women were given the right to vote. It's what underpinned, obviously in South Africa, the extension of the franchise to everyone in South Africa. There is no slave or free. There is no Greek or Jew. There is no man or woman. There is no black or white. Everyone is equal. This is a Christian perspective. It's founded on the idea that all human beings have a fundamental dignity. But that's not what democracy in Athens was about. It's not the founding principle. Actually, it's better to think of it as the power of the demos. And what is the demos? The demos to the Athenians is the sum of people who are sprung from the soil of Attica in the present, in the past, and in the future. And they have a sacral bond to the earth that has given them birth and to the gods that look after them. And it's that degree of effort, because I think, to be honest, one of the things that being kind of globally hegemonic, as Europeans have been, and perhaps particularly if you're an English speaker from Britain or from America, you've had 2 centuries of being able to assume that your values and your ideals and the way that you see the world is just the natural order of things. That's just the way things are. I think that as Western power retreats, that becomes less and less the case. I think that more and more we in the West will come to understand that our way of seeing the world is just one way of many different ways, and that actually, our values, our assumptions, our ideals are very, very contingent, culturally contingent. But I think that for the past 2 centuries, that's been, we've been able to coast by, assuming that the way that we see the world is just the way things are. And I don't think that's the case. And I think that in our essence, the way that we see the world is shaped above all by Christianity. And that doesn't mean that you have to believe in God, doesn't mean you have to go to church, doesn't mean that you even have to really know anything at all about Christianity. But it does mean that it's kind of like, those particles of dust that I talked about, that you just breathe them in, and you may not even realize that you're breathing them in, but there they are. It's part of the oxygen that you're breathing in.